Right, good afternoon and welcome to today's Cabinet meeting of Melton Borough Council. Members are reminded that we will be using the audio-visual system this afternoon, and the meeting will also be streamed live on YouTube. There is a quick reference card placed on the desk in front of you, which provides instruction on how to use the basic speaking function of the microphone. Members are asked to physically raise their hands in the usual way to indicate they wish to speak and to use their microphones when speaking for the benefit of all present. The microphone is live when the red light displays. Please switch mobile phones to silent or even better, off. I will now provide a reminder of the evacuation procedure. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, please leave by one of the 6 emergency exits around the sides of the chamber. Please assemble at the far side of the front car park nearest to the park entrance. Officers will be on hand to assist persons who require any assistance. Public recording of the meeting. There is legislation that allows the public to film, record, or use social media at a council meeting. This must not be disruptive to the good order of the meeting, nor include any filming or recording of the public seating area. So over to the page and to the main meat of the meeting. Apologies for absence. I think we've got full attendance, so we can move on to item 2. I'll move the minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 23rd of November 2021.
I'll second this.
Councillor Graham, second. Declarations of interest, members. I've just got my normal one, which is a personal interest in any matter relating to Leicestershire County Council, as I'm a member of that authority. Item 4, we have no items referred from the Scrutiny Committee in accordance with Scrutiny Procedure Rules. So we move to item 5. So I invite the Director of Growth and Regeneration to summarise the report on item 5, Housing Strategy 2021-2026. And this is Browne. How far off is she? We can move this one back until later.
She's online, so she should be joining.
Oh, okay. It's taking time. For members of the public who are watching, Browne is coming online. She's, I believe, she's in a queue in a waiting room, as they say, but having some small technical difficulty.
Councillor Orson.
Oh, thank you, Kieran.
I believe Browne might be having issues with sound, so I wonder if it is most appropriate to move this agenda item while she gets that sorted.
Yeah, we'll move it to later, and then perhaps you could text the Chief Executive to say when she's ready.
Will do, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Kieran. So we'll postpone item 5 till later when Browne will be able to get in to join us. So we move on to item 6, the draft Leicestershire Waste Strategy, which is for consultation. So I invite the Director for Housing and Communities to summarise the report. Michelle.
Okay, so the document you've got in front of you this evening introduces a consultation document that is being considered by all Leicestershire councils currently, with a proposal to begin a consultation process on the future of the Leicestershire Waste Strategy from January 2022. I'm going to suggest I hand over to Councillor Freer for a moment to give some detail on the report, and then I'm quite happy to add to that at the end, if that's okay, Councillor Freer.
So, Councillor Freer, we'll move the recommendation and provide any further introduction to the report.
Thank you, Leader. I'm very pleased to present this report, which includes in Appendix A our draft waste strategy for Leicestershire. The recommendations that the Cabinet need to improve tonight are 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3, which I'll come to later. Firstly, I'd like to say well done to the report author, the Communities and Neighbourhood Manager. The report is very well written and very clear. The report sets out the timeline and seeks authority to commence a period of public consultation. The reason for the recommendations: as a waste collection and disposal authority, we are required to have an agreed waste strategy. The current Leicestershire strategy is due for a refresh, and this has been in development over the last year. Each authority within the local waste partnership is in the process of seeking approval to go to a 12-week consultation. Melton Borough Council has... Hello, Pranali. Melton Borough Council, as a partner of this partnership, commissioned a resource management company to undertake a full review, and the updated version is to include the recent national policy directives and legislation. The National Resources and Waste Strategy, released in 2018, lists known problems with solutions to reduce reliance on single-use plastics, cut household recycling confusion, problems of packaging and end food waste. This covers the period up till 2050, keeping resources in use for longer. There's a target listed in there of 65% recycling rate of waste by 2035. This draft strategy has the vision, and the vision is supported by the strategy objectives and pledges and the benefits of the Leicestershire resident and communities. It benefits the Leicestershire resident and communities. You'll see in the report that there are pledges listed, 1 to 11 pledges. The headlines of these include our purchasing activities as a Leicestershire partnership, looking into food waste, waste prevention, improving the collection of items for reuse, reducing carbon emissions, continuing to collect garden waste, and contributing to the 65% recycling target by 2035. The report lists the public consultation engagement timetable. You'll see that in the report and also in the draft strategy. I'm fortunate enough to have been supported really a lot by the Communities and Neighbourhood Manager, and so I'm updated constantly about the draft strategy and also the changes within government legislation. The next steps for this is public consultation, which will begin in January 2022 on approval tonight for a 12-week period, with a target of full adoption by summer 2022. All in line with government policy legislation and most importantly, appropriate funding being made available. This is something that we have looked carefully at our pledges to ensure that we are able to fulfil those pledges, providing we get the funding available from the government. As under the equality heading, a full assessment will follow the consultation period concluded by the management company. So it gives me, so I'll just read out the recommendations. When I get to them. On 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. Which is under item 6. Apologies for the wait, I'll get there. So 2.1 notes and endorses the contents of the draft Leicestershire Resource and Waste Strategy. 2.2 approves, alongside the other councils within the Leicestershire Waste Partnership, that the draft strategy be subject to a period of consultation commencing in January 2022, and notes that minor amendments may be made by the Leicestershire Waste Partnership prior to publication of the consultation draft. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Freer. That was a very in-depth introduction, so thank you. More than an introduction, it was very good, actually. Leicestershire Waste Partnership has been tremendously successful, actually. It's been around a long time. It's proved itself time and time again. And I did notice on the East Midland News and also the Politics Show last Sunday, North West Leicestershire are trialling new collection systems. Obviously, that's through the Waste Partnership as well. So that just goes to show the enthusiasm there is for waste. The consultation, I suspect when it's rolled out across Melton Mowbray, will be members of the public will take part in that very well, because members of the public are keen to recycle. And the food waste one is going to be the interesting one for me, if much comments made about that. But like I say, I'm very pleased to second 212223. Malise has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Trade waste. Are we the only district that doesn't deal with trade waste? And are we missing a trick by not doing so? And should this be part of a consultation?
That's a question I can't answer. I know the trade recycling is something that the business improvement districts have undertaken, and they do offer a service to businesses within the Melton area. That's the question that you're asking specifically about trade waste and forming part of this consultation is something either I'd have to go to the director for or refer that question back to the communities and manager.
So on page 12, we've got the list, I think, of most of the other districts, and they all do something. And so I just wondered if we were missing a trick by not actually helping trade waste. And the other thing while I'm on, I just know, because I'm still bearing the scars, is it's got to be, the whole thing has been managed very carefully through PR, which will now have changed onto social media away from the Melton Times it was in my day. But it's got, once we go down, I'm sure it's easily manageable. But it was a trade waste question I really wanted to know. Thank you.
Director, is there any advice you can give him, Michelle?
So I'm unable to comment on the points about the trade waste, but I will make sure I speak to the manager for some clarity and advice on that. Can I just check, Councillor Graham, you were talking about managing communications in relation to the consultation?
I think everything, the consultation and the implementation.
Okay, so
I think I know that I'm bad at consulting and bad at, but this council did suffer traumas when we introduced the wheelie bin. Nowadays, nobody wants to go back to what we had before, but it was a difficult time, and people get set in their ways quite rightly, and they're all working very hard to recycle, and they're all limited for space as well. So the more bins we have to bear in mind actually that there's not a lot of room for too many things. But I look forward to hearing how the consultation goes. Thank you.
yeah, so our communications colleagues are obviously aware of this and the timeline, and are already in dialogue with the communications colleagues across the rest of Leicestershire. Through all of the councils will work together. We'll make sure that we've got very clear communications, because the absence of information will create that anxiety. I know our comms team have already picked up this potentially could be concerning for residents, and may create some of that anxiety. And so we will make sure that we've got a really clear plan, and we'll make sure that members are really sighted on that plan. And as we go through, with the implementation, we'll be making changes, we'll be learning along the way. And obviously there are a number of things that are proposed in terms of the new legislation, which are really significant. They are dependent on funding, which is why the pledges are worded in the way that they are. And then we can take a view in a managed way as to the implementation plans. But my assurance to you is that communication is something we'll manage really carefully with our colleagues.
Thank you very much for that help, Michelle. I don't believe anybody else wants to say anything, so recommendations have been moved and seconded at 212223. So I ask you to all raise your hands of those in favour, please. I believe that's unanimous. If that could be noted, please, Adam. Thank you very much. Now we're moving back to item 5, Housing Strategy 2021 to 2026. I understand the Director of Growth is with us. Here she is, Pranali. Yeah. So Pranali, welcome. I invite you to summarise the report of the Housing Strategy 2021-26.
Thank you, Leader, and apologies for the technology malfunction earlier, but I'm here now. This report presents the housing strategy for the whole Melton Borough. It includes housing not just in council ownership, but also private sector housing, and looks at housing in a very comprehensive and holistic way from the supply and demand for housing to looking at the right typology, considering are we building the right kind of size, scale in the right location, but also what is the condition of the housing stock within the area and what we need to do about dealing with some of the long legacy issues that we have. How do we work together with partners to make sure that we are future-proofing our housing stock, and also looking at all the new housing that we are developing, how we make sure that it's fit for the needs of our communities and our residents today, and it also meets the needs of residents tomorrow over a long period of time. So it is, as I say, a very comprehensive piece of work. We did the consultation over 6 weeks period during August and September. And usually with this kind of strategy reports, we don't get much engagement, but on this one, we got really meaningful responses back, not just from the residents, but also from a range of partners and stakeholders, which was very helpful because it did shape the actual final form of this document. And we were able to look at a whole raft of different things that people have suggested. If you look at the paragraph 5.15 and 5.16, it does highlight in summary the key points that people said during the consultation for council to take forward, but as well as for the partners and various stakeholders groups to take forward as well. So the plan is that if this strategy gets approved by the cabinet today and with recommendation for approval at the council next week, then we work with all these partners to prepare a long-term action plan. Now that action plan for the whole wide borough and the housing provision, it's not just the council can work on its own. We will need support from partners, but we know from the engagement exercise that we have that support, and that action plan will be brought forward to the cabinet in the spring next year. So I suggest that I know that Councillor Browne and Councillor Bindloss have had very active involvement in developing and shaping the document as it is, and they are keen to get involved going forward in the delivery of the strategy as well. So I'll stop at that and take any questions members have on this.
Thank you very much, Banali. I now invite Councillor Bindloss, the portfolio holder for growth and regeneration, to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure that you'll all agree with me that this is an excellent piece of work and one that gives us a greater insight and understanding into the needs and requirements set before us to ensure the borough a successful continuation in its evolution. The housing strategy document underpins the way that we will build houses along with the infrastructure that supports them for the next 5 years and the priorities that we make in relation to these considerations. All of this will ultimately help us to shape Melton for generations to come. Much of the issues highlighted within the report and the way forward in relation to our strategy are well known to us. However, the credibility of this document lies not just in what we already know, or indeed what officers may tell us, but from our community and through the consultation with them that has also had an input and ultimately helped to shape this report into the fine document that it is today. The housing document highlights many key areas for us to be aware of, which need addressing, and among these, and it's so important to see highlighted, the lack of social housing to rent. It highlights that we are below the national average, something that we must address in a proactive way. That much of our housing is older is also mentioned, and therefore it will cost more to maintain and run an efficient way. Our population is becoming older, and the ramifications that go along with this also must be considered in the future. So our new housing strategy document must address all of the above and the many other related issues that this report highlights so well. I mentioned earlier infrastructure, and we must make certain that along with housing, that we ensure that we pay heed to this area, as the need for substantial quality infrastructure that will cope with the demands of our growing borough was mentioned again and again and again, particularly in the public consultation document. Our report also highlights that to maximise local employment, there is a need for the training and for the upskilling of the trades locally, which helps build and maintain our houses and all that goes with them. To be successful in achieving this, we must network with the relevant agencies. As our report suggests, we must be mindful and proactive in our providing of new homes and be flexible enough to react to the needs of the different communities within our borough. In addition, use similar considerations in the upgrading of our older homes as well, so that they also meet not only the needs of the residents, but they are also addressing the requirements of the climate and environment. Our report goes on to highlight the need for housing to be affordable, not only in their direct purchase by using schemes like Help to Buy and the like, but also and importantly in having realistically and affordable private rental. And above all, the above should be quality housing, quality infrastructure. The necessity to provide quality shines throughout the whole of this consultation report. The conclusion to this shown in the strategic objectives of the report are delivering growth, better homes, supporting people, sustainable homes. And with that, I would like to thank all the officers who have worked so hard to produce this report. Really is first class. And I would like to move the recommendations. We approve 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bindloss, for that, again, in-depth introduction. Councillor Browne, can I ask if you could second, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, absolutely no problem in seconding this report and document. Just really like to thank the officers for all the hard work that's gone into this. And it's quite refreshing that we're actually recognising the challenges that we do have within the borough. They're not unique by any means to Melton. It's a picture that we will see across the country, but differs in different parts of the country depending on where you live. For example, regards tenures and different pressures upon certain types of tenures. But there's a couple of little things a couple of points I would like to mention is just to point out that the challenges that we do have, which will change the way that we have to look at housing. For example, when you look at the report on page 29, you will see that we have a greater increased demand for single persons housing. Yeah, we used to live in we used to live together in families. We used to maybe longer at home as young people. That's changing now where people need to go out. And that's going to be a greater challenge, especially for the social housing sector. That's going to have to meet that demand because it's not always per square foot as affordable to build one person units as it is to build 2, 3 or 4 bedroom units. The other thing that would like to just point out is that if we look at the rural area affordability issues compared to the urban affordability issues, they're quite significant. 387,000 for a house in a rural area compared to 222 in the town. That's quite significant, and is likely to give us challenges that we're going to have to face, especially through the planning process going forward. Thirdly, I would just like to say that I think we need to review, and I'm glad that Councillor Bindloss and myself have been listened to around bringing greater social rent units into the borough and move away from giving developers a free hand of getting off with really market discount housing where they can move and commute certain sums. But we actually have social housing at affordable rents, because if we look at page 33, you will see that the local housing allowance, the cap, is actually, if you're completely dependent on benefits and in work, you're not going to be able to afford a house in the private rented sector. And we all know that and the challenges to that. So I look forward to the plan that's going to come after. I look forward to working with other partners such as the County Council, such as the NHS, such as Severn Trent, etc. around the infrastructure, and so that we can actually have more robust, sustainable communities going forward that are actually attractive and affordable for our communities to live in, and hopefully attract more younger people to stay, remain and work in the borough rather than leaving, so that we have a brain drain to other areas. So really happy, Chair, to second this motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Browne. Councillor Graham wants to ask a question or query at
Two,
least.
two points, page 47, fourth bullet point. I think the word is meant to be accept rather than accept. It does have a slight difference of meaning. And if we're going to print it, we might as well get it right. Page 47. Yep. Fourth bullet point down. Yeah. It was only because it would change the meaning if it was the other way around. And the other one really is the bottom bullet point on page 49. What can we do about developers who don't keep their side of the bargain on doing up and maintaining the estates? It's highlighted on the last bullet point of page 49. And I just wondered if there's any, if we have any restitution or way we can cope with that.
I suspect that the best person to answer that question, I could give you lots of answers, but I'm sure that Jim would perhaps be the best person to answer that question.
The question was if they don't maintain their side of the bargain. Right, okay, so these things are usually wrapped up by 106s, which for all intents and purposes are legally binding contracts, and we can enforce those through injunction through the court if we have the will and the ability. We don't, I'm not aware of any cases, I might add, where people have shortchanged us in that way. We have had a number where they've come back to us asking for adjustments, reductions, and planning committee deliberates over those at great length, and it's quite difficult at times, but we haven't had any actual naughty boys that we've had to chase.
That's great, because I just sort of picked it up in the comment and I thought, well, but if it isn't a serious problem, that's great. Thank you so much.
I don't believe there's any further questions at all. Obviously 212223 have been proposed and seconded. I'd just like to add my congratulations as well to the authors, people who've put a huge amount of work into the strategy 2021-26. It is a good document, as Rob's already said, really done well. It's so well done. Now we move to the vote. Those in favour, please raise their hands. Unanimous again, if that could be noted, please, Adam. Thank you very much. Item 7, corporate performance and progress report for quarter 21-22. So I turn to Director for Corporate Services to summarise the report.
Yes, thank you, Leader. So the report puts forward the first performance report of this year, covering the first 6 months of the year. The appendix provides the detailed information along with key performance indicators and the direction of travel. A summary for each corporate priority is provided in the covering report, and also to aid a more wider understanding of our performance, there's also information on complaints broken down per directorate so that the full picture of the council's performance can be seen. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Dawn. I turn to Councillor Ronnie de Burgh, Portfolio Holder for Corporate Finance Resources, to move the recommendation.
Apologies, everybody. Thank you, Leader. I think it's an excellent report, and I move on the recommendation at 2.1. Note the contents of the report and provide any observations or actions to the relevant officers accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ronnie. I'll second that. I mean, it's always a difficult report to talk about, isn't it? Because it is what it is at the end of the day. And it's hard to think back to when our chief executive came in 2017 and I became leader, that we didn't even have such reports. And it's just quite amazing how we had no reports on performance. But obviously we put that right. It shows what's good about us. As I've always said in the past, it does show the barometer. I particularly like this report, by the way, because it does take the 6 corporate priorities and addresses them. I do like that style of report. So any comments, anyone? I have Councillor Browne with a comment.
Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, just as it affects my portfolio, is that we've seen an increase in complaints in housing and tenancy management repairs. I would actually like to point out that I see that as being positive, really positive, because I think we had a culture of where we maybe weren't recording complaints as accurately and as robustly as we should do. So again, thank you to the officers, and especially for Michelle's directorate for taking on board all those improvements and actually implementing them. And again, on the government's white paper and the offer to our tenants, we have to encourage people to make them, because we'll use them, and we're using them to improve the service delivery of both how we manage our tenancies, but also how we repair our properties. And I think we'll start seeing that trend probably stay there for a little while, and then once we start really learning from it, we'll hopefully see that going reducing and leveling out a bit. But I just want to say, actually, it's not a negative thing in this instance. It's actually, I think it should be seen as being very positive.
Thanks very much, Councillor Browne, for that. I don't believe there's any other observations to be made. Councillor Bill's moved 2-1. I've seconded it. Ask you to raise your hands in favour. It does, I would say, to note, but we'll still have a vote now. Gone that far. Councillor Browne must will have his hand in the air as well. So we can note that as unanimous, please, Adam. So we move on to the last item, which is the adoption, item 8, adoption of the Melton South Master Plan. So I turn to the Assistant Director for Planning and Delivery to summarise the report, please. Over to you, Jim.
Thank you, Leader. It's common knowledge now that we received the great news that the HIF bid legal agreement was agreed between Homes England and the County Council last week. And this item very much relates to that. I won't dwell on that because I rather suspect the leader and the portfolio holder will want to comment further. So this master plan builds on the work that was done at the end of 2020 and adds rather meat to the bones of the development framework that was approved then, almost exactly a year to the day, by the way, I noticed when I was preparing. It follows a similar path to its twin sister for the North Sustainable Neighbourhood, which you approved a couple of months ago. But it does have differences, and one key difference in particular. That one was focused entirely on the local plan area and applied a lot of detail as to what we were aspiring to in that part of the world. But this does that, but it goes further still. Its scope is wider, both in terms of the land that it covers and the timetable that it occupies. So it incorporates the southern neighbourhood, but it goes beyond, as I say, in both physically and in terms of the horizon ahead. And that is all important in terms of this piece of work and its relationship with HIF, because one of the cornerstones of the HIF bid was additionality. That's the word that was in fashion at the time, i.e. to maximise the potential of the MMDR beyond what we were proposing in our current plan. So that explains why this is a bigger animal than the local plan standing on isolation. It also represents the fourth and final strand of our commitments to the County Council that we agreed to back in the summer in order to support their pursuit of the HIF bid and their acceptance of the HIF bid as it now is. So very pleased we've been able to uphold our half of the bargain and on time, which is very satisfying. These are actually quite large pieces of work, so it was something of a, it has been quite intense. Obviously, the master plan is a significant step forward to realising our growth ambition and vital in terms of that sort of final missing leg of the MDR. At a technical level, it will be used by planning committee as a material consideration when they're dealing with applications in that area, both those that are in the south neighbourhood as it's defined, but also those that relate to it as set out in this master plan, because it covers, as I've discussed, the adjoining land. And finally, if I may, just to highlight that on this occasion, the decision does lie in the gift of cabinet. So for this particular item, it's not a matter of referral to full council, unlike my last appearance here. So this lies with you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Worley. I move to Councillor Bindloss to propose the 212223.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Jim. You know, it's very difficult to know where to start with something of this magnitude. The amount of work that's been put into this by so many is actually quite overwhelming, but it's been worth all of their endeavours 100 times over. And I thank all involved for their diligence and hard work. For acceptance and approval of this master plan is the final piece of the jigsaw regarding our commitment to LCC, to support receipt of Housing Infrastructure Fund, HIF, funding for the MMDR South. We also received, obviously, the great news last week that LCC have agreed terms with Homes England to accept the funds, and we have the indication that it will be indeed be built by March 2025, I hope. The master plan is entirely complementary to the MMDR. Indeed, it incorporates it and the housing, along with the infrastructure and employment growth associated with it, all of which was, of course, envisaged within the local plan. However, it goes further than the local plan, both in terms of scope and timescale. It projects beyond the life of the local plan to show the extra growth the MMDR can achieve. This is important to the project as the terms of HIF were additionality. So it's about demonstrating the wider potential of the MMDR. The master plan has been developed in close consultation of key stakeholders, the landowners concerned and the county council as the key infrastructure provider. It set out a framework for the whole area in terms of housing, employment, land, and the key infrastructures such as the 2 primary schools and the 1 secondary school, and of course the line of the MMDR South. There is a level of details as well, setting out some key design and layout issues, such as the green infrastructure, travel routes, and most importantly, the phasing to explain when key infrastructure will be needed. For example, when the schools will be provided, as the development progresses, and a timetable for the implementation of all these is in its content. The distributor road is now able to be at its most efficient and maximize the efficient flow of traffic through and around our town. It will enable our town to flourish and will reduce the weight and the traffic passing through it as well as helping reduce the harmful emissions from vehicles queuing through the town, people endeavouring to get from A to B. It will bring new opportunities for business, both from the possible expansion of already well-established businesses, but also to give new businesses quality, well-thought-out premises from which to grow and develop. These alone will bring much needed new employment opportunities for the residents of the borough. Quality, well thought out homes for families to live in, and the development of a well thought out supportive infrastructure will help to give another dimension to our residents. It will afford them good access to the town through cycle and pedestrian links and improved access to recreation. This is now becoming the way forward for Melton, and the way Melton has wanted and needed for so long. The reality of this starts with us now, for the benefit of Melton residents and for the businesses alike. The master plan represents a significant step forward to realising all this growth and ambition. It will be taken into account by our planning committee as a material consideration when dealing with the applications that relate to this area, and I have no hesitation in supporting this approval. This now becomes the way forward that Melton has wanted and needed for so long, and the reality starts now, as we've said earlier, for the benefit of Melton. I would like to move the recommendations are approved and accepted 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bindloss and Mr. Worley. Quite an in-depth introduction to that, which has been a long road for us all. I'm very happy to second 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and I take myself back to last June when we agreed the contribution of 1.75 million from Melton Borough Council. That was by handshake, by the way, not the formal adoption of that process. Basically, when I met Nick and Councillor Taylor of Leicestershire County Council in Old Alby Pub, actually, but that's where the deal was done. And it still seemed a long way off. And then, of course, on the 20th of July, the County Council Cabinet effectively gave us a challenge in a way, I suppose, a certain number of conditions. And this really is the final piece. When those conditions were set, I have to say I was really worried about the southern one, because although have it done by the new year as it was agreed, it seemed a long way off at the time. I realised there's a huge amount of work to do. And the County Council are now in a position, they've got just over 70 million now from the government, Homes England, and also contribution from Melton Borough Council into that amount for education with us. So that's a significant start. The rest of the money they will be getting for the highways directly from the developers, and then Melton Borough Council will play a massive part in collecting 106 money for the education funding. The County Council are now working on a planning application for the MMDR, which they will decide at their Development Control Board at some point next year. As Councillor Bindloss has already said, it is scheduled to be finished by 2025, and as I understand it, negotiations are going on with landowners at this moment in time. So it's, as Councillor Bindloss said, it really is an exciting time. And although Councillor Bindloss has said it, thanks to the officers and to everyone who's contributed to this deal, we can't say it enough. It is absolutely massive, the biggest deal I suspect this council has ever been involved in. Certainly the biggest construction exercise that Leicestershire County Council have ever had. It is exciting. It's going to bring wonderful new opportunities. And as I said, time and time again, if you're looking for a post-COVID regeneration programme, surely this is it. It will bring new growth to Melton, exciting times. And I'm 70, as most people know, so at least I'd like to think I'm going to be around to drive down that road in 2025. So well done to everyone. Recommendations have been moved at 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. Has anyone got any further comments before we move to the vote? No, we'll move straight to the vote then. All in favour? Unanimous, if that could be please noted, Adam. I believe that brings us to the end of the agenda, Chief Executive. It does. So all it remains for me to say is thank you very much for those attending and listening, and wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you very much.